Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Seth Joyner Show. Excited. We're on the precipice of the 2021 Philadelphia Eagles season. Coming up against the Atlanta Hawks this week. And we got Thursday night football first, the defending champs against the Dallas Cowgirls. I'll call them that without, taking it any further. But that's going to be interesting to watch on Thursday night. But to help me break it all down, my partners, you guys know them as the Midday crew from WIP, Decamara and Ritchie. Joe, what's happening?
Seth, how are you, buddy?
What's going on, my man?
Hi, Seth.
Hey, listen, are you guys as excited as I am, or is there a bit of apprehension? And I must say, before we get started, John, when you came back off of vacation, that first morning back, I was driving to play golf, stuck in traffic on the 76, and had the pleasure of hearing your rant. And man, was it epic. Wow. It was epic. So first of all, I want you to I'm going to give you the floor because I want you to for my listeners and my viewers that wasn't privy to it, I want them to hear it because you said so many things that I agree with. And I've been talking about it ever since you said it about creating this culture of fear. Take the floor, my friend.
I'm very troubled. You asked if we're excited. I'm nervous. I don't know what this team is, who this team is, because I don't think they know who they are because they haven't been permitted to come together as a group. They haven't been allowed to get out there and, pit their strengths against other teams in the preseason. We were walking on eggshells, bubble wrapping these guys to such a great extent this preseason. We had guys who needed work who didn't get it. We have erred to the side of conservative protectionism of these players when the only way you get ready to play football is by playing football. They've been out there walking through. They've been out there doing like jog-throughs with baseball caps on instead of putting cleats on, getting their cleats in the earth and driving through people and rolling their hips and tackling and practicing the things that make you great at beating another man. Football is all about who's stronger, who's tougher, who's meaner, who's going to win this one-on-one matchup 11 times across the board on any play. And these guys haven't had a chance to do that yet. So I don't think they know who they are. I don't think this coaching staff, certainly, who is not the most experienced staff on the planet, that's for sure, knows exactly what they've got heading into Atlanta. It's a rough spot to be in, and it's a precarious spot. I have no idea how good this team is.
Before I'll let you have a rebuttal to this comment, John, I want to throw this to Joe. What do you think about those that sit at the opposite end of the spectrum of what John just talked about, who believe that this is a new NFL? Guys can get to work in practice. I almost blew my top when Nick Siriani said we had 2 practices against the Patriots and 2 practices against the Jets, and they were like games. An hour and 20-minute practice are like games. And then he said, "Oh,
it's not a game.
We've got 7 games under our belt." Okay, but Joe, given the Eagles' last 3 years of injuries, there are many people that believe that this is the new NFL and this is the way it's going to work. That you're going to protect players. Their priority was to get all the starters and as many players to week 1 healthy. That priority has been fulfilled. Okay. So what do you think? What's your belief as far as that's concerned, that this is the way that you do it now?
Yeah, it's a huge question, Seth. First off, I got to say, John, you should write down conservative protectionism, because that sounds like the Monroe Doctrine. Okay, that sounds like something a president would say to talking about national defense.
We're going
Conservative,
to hashtag that for the season.
Yeah.
right?
It
Well,
doesn't win football games.
And Seth, it's not just about. It really isn't even just a football. I mean, we're talking football, and that's awesome. But it goes across the board with all these sports, and I think primarily the NBA. I mean, Kawhi Leonard can only play 60 games. Is it because only chooses to play 60 games? Is it because he honestly feels that playing those extra 82 would make him limited in the postseason, or is it because, frankly, given a max contract, he'd rather just play 60 games instead of 82 games because 60 games is easier? I don't know. Look, I think you guys are touching on huge issues here across sports. Let's talk football. I agree, Seth, with John. I think the Eagles' approach this preseason was foolish. I thought it was a bad tone setter for a new head coach coming off of inheriting a roster that most of it is back from last year that went 4-11-1. I thought it was just a really stupid decision. Now, I will say this. To really answer the question, Seth, I'd almost feel I'd have to have data in front of me of how various organizations have done it. Take the last, really, we're talking mostly about the last 5 years, because while this has been headed in this direction, this extreme, where some teams basically just don't play their players, has really only, I think it's only been going on for just a couple of years. So I'd like to kind of see, how it sizes up organization to organization. I have my deep concerns, just as you and John do. I think it's a mistake. But I will say the pushback could involve this question. I mean, John, I'll ask you. So what's the sweet spot? Like, you want to see the players play, the starters. I agree. But, a lot of us say, well, play a quarter, play a half. I mean, John, Seth, how do you know that 3 drives is better than 7 drives is better than 1 drive? I mean, what's the answer to that?
Well, I know that the way that we once did it, where you played a lot more than this, is better. I believe that, because there's this phenomenon that occurs, and Seth, you can speak to this. Your body goes through a transformation in training camp, where initially you don't know how you're going to make it through, and you feel like everything's falling off, everything's hurting. You'll never escape the pain, and then all of a sudden, after a week, things steady, and it's almost like your nerves, like the pain sensor receptors in your body, stop reacting the way that they once did. That's like the first step to getting in football shape. And these players are not there. You have to, and it's not just, one part of your body. It's not just, one system in your body. It's everything. It's mentally, it's emotionally, it's physically. I just can't say it any more simply than you have to play football to get good at playing football. And these guys still haven't done it. So I expect that this first month of the season is going to be like a preseason. Like, they will be in shape, I know for sure, in October. But at that point, when you've got some teams that have, spanned this gap between the old school and the new school a little bit more effectively than we have, when they've had players go out there and play a half in a couple of these preseason games, in addition to doing the scrimmages and that sort of thing, I think those teams will be physically, emotionally, and mentally better prepared to get out there and do a better job. We are at a disadvantage for this first month.
And Seth, let me jump in on that, because John hit a point about the first month. I think it's really, really key for this team this year. September is a month where they've got a shot. Like, if they're obviously they're aiming for the playoffs, but if they're going to achieve that goal, let's say that involves 9 wins, 9-8, or 10 wins, 10-7, because I don't think they're going to get any higher than that. But those are achievable numbers. Things would have to break their way. I mean, they got to hit the ground running in September. We all know in October they're going to lose to Kansas City. We all know in October they're probably going to lose to Tom Brady, right? I mean, those are games they're probably going to lose. But these first 3 games, Atlanta, who last year was 4-12, San Francisco at home, who last year was not very good, and Jimmy G's not a very good quarterback, and Dallas, who's got a terrible defense. I mean, to what both of you guys are talking about, I wanted to see the Eagles hitting the ground running because these are literally 3 games that in the end could determine whether they make the playoffs or not. And I don't want to, and I know that Matt Ryan didn't play in the preseason, and that's their choice. But I would have preferred that the Eagles would have had training in place, not just practice, but actual preseason games, where 5 days from now, when they take the field, instead of it being Jalen Hurts' 11th play of 2021, so to speak, it would have been his 71st play of 2021, and the Eagles could have had an advantage over the Atlanta Falcons, I believe.
Well, listen, I will say this. You asked the question, how much is enough? I can remember when I was in training camp, each game, the starters got progressively more work in the preseason. By the time, and it was planned. Buddy's thing was, okay, you guys are getting 2 series tonight, but if you play like shit, you're getting another one. Okay. You're getting a half, and you can take your pads off at halftime. But if you play like crap in the first half, you're going to get the first 2 series of the second half, So there was always these motivators built in with him to ensure, that we would get how much work he thought was enough. But if we didn't play well, the punishment was, okay, you get a couple of more series. To John's point about, players and how you deal with training camp, there's a physical side to training camp. There's a mental side of training camp, okay, and how you come out of it and how that prepares you for the season. I've said forever, training camp for me was about galvanizing my body to prepare it for the regular season. Now I could lift and I can run and I can train. I could even come in to what is OTAs today and be, and go through that. But that could never prepare me for what the regular season was like. That couldn't even really prepare me for what preseason was like, because the first preseason game, your senses are way up here. By the time you get to regular season, magnify that by 20%, because everyone's excited. First game of the season, and if your body's not ready, okay, so the hits, the knocks, the aches and pains that the Eagles players should have been feeling in training camp,
yeah,
to John's point, they're going to feel those in the first 4 weeks. That could determine what the first 4 games look like, to your point, Joe. At the other end of the spectrum, okay, these players aren't built like they were built in our day. They get a high ankle sprain, they're out 4 to 6 weeks. They get a hangnail, they're down for a week. Jalen Hurts, he had his tummy ache. You mean to tell me he had gas and you sat him for a preseason game when he should have played a whole half? The kid said, hey, if it was a regular season, I would have played. That tells me it wasn't something that was that bad. Let him gut it out. Let him show the rest of the team, especially at that position, his toughness. Because his ability to show the toughness, his ability to do what some other players won't do, builds the type of following that he needs to be the leader of the team. You want everyone else to follow him. Let him get out there and play, even if it's just 2 series or a quarter or a half, whatever it is, okay? He was not going to die because you put him out there to play in that preseason game. But they acted like it was so serious. We had to send him to the hospital, but I don't know whether he's at home or whether he's back in the building. If it was that bad, shouldn't you as a head coach know where your starting quarterback is after he goes to the hospital? I'm not going to jump on the Eagles. Let's just, talk about what's going on here. Joe, to your point, there's so much uncertainty. Like I said, in the first preseason game, I was excited at what I saw in the first half. By the time we got to game 2 and game 3, I began to really wonder, where this team was headed and if they would be any good this year. And then I looked at the schedule and I was like, okay, Nick Siriani is talking about how he wants to use the element of surprise because they're vanilla on offense, they're vanilla on defense. They're going to go into week 1 and nobody's going to know what they're running. Okay. I get that. But it really comes down to me to what teams can adjust the best, because you know what? You're playing a team in week 1 that's operating under the same auspices. Okay. You don't know what they're going to run. You don't know what they're going to look like in any phase of the game, offense, defense, or special team. You have no idea. Okay. So this game is going to come down to what coaching staff can adjust. And in my opinion, turnovers or maybe even injuries, because if the Falcons mode of operation was like the Eagles and you go out and you ramp up the intensity 20 to 25%, somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody's going to get hurt. I'm not saying that I want to see it happen, but I just know it's a gradual, climb to week 1. You can't just put it on cruise control and get to week 1 and turn the lights on. It doesn't work that way.
Well, and Seth, there's also the point, if you remember, I think it was 2 seasons ago, week 2 in Atlanta, 2 or 3 years ago, I think it was 2, when the Eagles had, I think it was 3 different offensive skill position players go down either before the game or in the first 5 to 10 minutes of the game. And that's when Carson was out there with Manny, Mo, and Jack, for the whole game, but the first half in particular, when you had all these backups, who weren't used to playing that much, and they were completely overmatched. And Carson was bad, and there's no doubt, but he was put in a really compromised spot. I think that was the night Deshaun went out. I believe one of the tight ends went out. And so, you get John talks about it all the time. You get these soft tissue injuries that happen early in the year when the guys haven't been pushed. It's to me, it's all very frustrating. And by the way, there's a whole separate issue within this issue, which of course is the preseason product, independent of how it plays for the Eagles season or the Falcons season or any of these teams. Just how broken the preseason product is, and what a complete farce. I mean, look at this. It's not as big a farce as the Pro Bowl, but it's damn close to it. And you want to talk about the 2 biggest farces in all sports? It's probably the NFL Pro Bowl when they play it, and frickin' preseason football, because it stinks.
Yeah, it does. I can't believe that this team feels comfortable and confident that they're ready to go. Seth, when you think about the way that your body feels in that first game, this after the old way, after the real training camp where you were hitting every single day and you were practicing twice a day, you go into the locker room at halftime of that first game and you are gassed. There is a level of exhaustion that it runs through to your core, where you're going to just have to dig deep and push it, and your muscles, they're almost numb because there's no juice left. That's when like the danger signs are there for soft tissue injury, for not being able to protect yourself properly. Every single guy on our team is going to be feeling that way in this first game. In the first quarter, they're going to be exhausted out there, and they're not going to be able to protect themselves properly. And I'm worried about that. Their whole goal, it's like pretend football. We're just going to pretend we're playing until the season starts, and then we're going to unleash the hounds, and those guys are going to be just like they were last year. It doesn't work like that.
Interesting. I want to get into, this culture, and, I know we're talking about the injuries and we're talking about the lack of playing time, here on the Seth Joyner Show. My guests, Jon Ritchie and Joe Decamara of the Midday Show on WIP. We'll get to some football, but I do, this is a major issue to me. The constant talking about, thinking about, and belief in injuries. Okay. I learned a long time ago, the thing that you think about the most is the thing that you attract to you. So if you're walking around as an organization and you're talking about, keeping guys healthy, injuries, if you're talking about it all the time, that's the thing that you're drawing to yourself.
Yeah.
That's bad for an organization, in my opinion. Okay. Yeah. We don't live in a world of football anymore where guys, battle through injuries and play with injuries. These kids today, when they get injured, they shut it off. They shut it down. And I don't know whether it's they're shutting it down or whether the organization is in such protective mode that they shut the player down in a mode of, okay, we're going to protect the player from himself. Because in our day, we go out and play with a torn ACL if we could still run. These kids now, they get a hangnail on their baby toe and they shut it off. They shut it down. Okay. So let's talk about that, but let's also talk about this. Okay. Who is behind this mode of thinking? Is this Nick Siriani?
No.
Or is this Howie Roseman?
Yeah.
Because if I'm a head coach, I've got my kids, I got my guys in OTAs, I got my guys in training camp, I got my guys in preseason. When we get to the preseason games, there are things that I'm trying to decipher about every player on my roster as a new head coach, a new defensive coordinator, a new offensive coordinator that I need to know. How do they react when things are going good? How do they react when things are going bad? How do they react when they're a little nicked up? How do they react, when the special teams gives up, a 90-yard punt return or kick return? I need to know that. I need to learn my team. So if I can't put them out there, I have to learn that as I go, as I coach through a 17-game schedule. Thoughts?
All right, let me go first, because Seth, I so agree with you on everything you've been saying, but I think you missed a group, in your listing when you said Howie and Sirianni. I think a lot of it goes to the players. I don't think the players as a collective, and I'm not talking Eagles players, I'm talking NFL players. By the way, this goes across like almost all the sports, because we see it with the baseball pitchers. I mean, think of it this way. If Nick Sirianni came in and, he wanted to be Dick Vermeil or Andy Reid and, buddy, and he's going to put the guys through the paces hard. A guy like Fletcher Cox, who's been standing on the sidelines without pads on in the third and fourth quarter of preseason games, probably at least for the last 5 years, is going to look at the guy and say, "What, are you kidding me?" I mean, these guys have become conditioned based on the way whoever first started it. I don't know who started it. I do think the investment and how much money players make kind of ties into this. I think when you see some serious preseason injuries, and we haven't seen too many through the years, but we certainly have seen some. I think Mark Sanchez, it wasn't even that good, but he was pretty young and had some success. I think he got injured one preseason. I think Jason Sehorn, got injured in a preseason about 20 years ago. And somewhere along the lines, GMs and coaches got freaked out, and players became accustomed to this. And to me, there's nothing that speaks to it more than the fact that every single time there's a collective bargaining agreement between the players and the owners, the players in the league, the players union, which you guys were obviously a part of, back in the day, asked for, hey, we want to have less work. We want to have less practices. We want to have less mandatories. So I do believe it does go back to the players. I'm sure the agents are playing a big part in this. Players see other leagues not have to come back in the offseason and check in with their coaches and all that sort of stuff. This is the only league that does that. I think it's been great for the product of the league, because it keeps not only does it sharpen the players up, but I think it's really good from a branding standpoint that the NFL stays in the news when the guys come back in May and June. But the bottom line is players don't want to do it. They've been told for the most part they don't have to. And so I believe they've become conditioned to not giving more. And I'll just say this and then turn it over to John, because John and I deal with this, Seth, all throughout the baseball season. And it drives both of us absolutely nuts. It's like a pitcher feels like, and even fans feel like, a pitcher has scaled Mount Everest if he gets to 200 innings in a season. A starting pitcher, it's like these guys pitch every fifth day. When the three of us were growing up, pitchers pitched every fourth day. That change just happened kind of when we were young, different ages, but pretty close to each other in age. And, I remember when pitchers would pitch 250 or get up to 300 innings. I mean, Steve Carlton in 1980 pitched like 330 innings or something. So people today would think it's impossible. It's not impossible. We saw it happen. But players have become conditioned based on whoever started it to say, you know what, let's just take the easy way out. And I think it hurts teams. And I think the organization that pushes their players will find a competitive advantage. I don't think the Navy SEALs are Navy SEALs unless they are pushed to the limit by the Navy SEAL instructors. And I'm not trying to be this like old school guy to the hilt, but I do believe there is an advantage and a disadvantage if you can find the sweet spot within this process in this system.
I'm gonna let John go, and then I'm gonna tell you why the adjustment was made from a player's perspective.
Yep.
Okay, so John, go, and then I'm gonna circle back and touch on what Joe just talked about.
I would love to. I can't wait to hear what you're going to say, Seth. I think Joe and I are so aligned on this. It's unfortunate that things that have transpired, the direction that the players union has gone with this, with the pressure, from the players saying we want to practice less because it has careened overboard beyond where these players are helping themselves any longer. I'm dying to hear what you have to say about this. How did it get to this point? I know that it's human nature to want to hurt less, to want to toil less, I guess, because that's the way it feels at times when you're really putting in the work in the summer for in training camp and that sort of thing. Guys are trying to circumvent that and take the short and easy way, and they've lost track along the way of what really wins football games.
Well, a lot of that, John, depends on how great you want to be. If you're there for the paycheck, well, you're trying to circumvent the system of hard work, that allows you to do the least amount of work to get the most amount of money. Okay. If you're there for greatness and you're there to win championships and you're there for legacy, you're not afraid of the hard work because you know what it takes to be able to get there. So let me tell you how we got here. And Joe, you talk about the players. Okay. After my rookie year, I go into Buddy's office and he says, what's your plans for the off season? I said, well, I think I'm going to go back to UTEP. I'm going to enroll in school. I'm going to take some classes, start working out, getting prepared for next year. He looks at me and he says, you're either going to be a student or you're going to be a football player. The off-season program starts February 28th. And he pointed to the door and sent me out in his office. Okay. So I arrived back in Philadelphia on February 28th. And we worked, me, Alonzo Johnson, and all the other young linebackers, we worked from February 28th till the coaches went on vacation in June, which meant that, we got the same amount of vacation as the coaches got because we had to be back for training camp when they came back, okay? So now, you had some coaches over the years that created this, it's involuntary. We got these involuntary, this mini camp is involuntary. You can show up or you don't show up. But you don't show up, you know that your job is lost, okay? So guys would show up. And the problem is that your off season was cut into. But you're playing football. You're living your dream. You're making a king's ransom to do what it is that you love to do. Now, as I became a veteran, that was less important because why? The greatest learning curve for me was that February to the second week of June. We worked Monday through Friday from 9 to 2 to 2:30. We watched film. We lifted weights. We were on the field. We conditioned. Okay. We did everything. I can remember looking at Wade Phillips. I'm like, Coach, we've been doing this 3Z drop for an hour now. How many times am I going to do? He's like, you're going to do it until it becomes as second nature to you as it is to put one foot in front of the other and walk, okay? Now, during the process, I didn't like it, but looking back now, that was the most important time for me, okay? So now, as Plan B comes into focus, in 1987, I was a part of the NFL when we struck that year. Plan B precipitated total free agency. Okay, now the players are starting to get a little more power. Okay, now you got free agency, the money takes off. Yep. Once the money takes off, now the players, they begin to feel empowered. Well, we don't want to spend as much time. We can go to the negotiating table, and instead of negotiating for crap that really makes a difference in the long term of our life, we don't want to be, at the facility, as much as we've been at the facility. Okay, that works for all the players. Like I said, for veterans, that's okay because as a veteran, I now know what to do. I know now how to do it. I know how to prepare for an upcoming season. who gets hurt here? The young guys get hurt because they're walking around like veterans and they haven't done anything in the game. They don't understand how to use their eyes when they're trying to read a defense. They don't understand the footwork that's necessary for a fullback when he's going to block, a linebacker. So now you're a step late and you're getting your ass blown up in the hole instead of taking on the linebacker on the other side of the ball. All of these little things made a major difference. So you can talk about the players, but these are the concessions that the owners, Joe, was willing to give up in negotiation to be able to get what they wanted on the other side. There's always an overcorrection. There's an overcorrection in everything when you see the NFL, okay? The NFL loses the lawsuit, concussion lawsuit. It has ramifications from the pro level all the way down to the youth level, okay? We're still trying to figure out and teach kids the proper way to tackle without them getting thrown out of games because, they're leading with the crown of the helmet, okay? But it has ramifications all the way down, all right? So what does that mean? We overcorrect, Not only do you find a player, but you target and you throw us behind out of the game. And you're probably going to take half of his paycheck, overcorrection.
Yeah.
And it's overcorrection in every direction when you talk about what's going on in the offseason. You talk about how these coaches deal with players. I'm looking at rookies sitting on the sideline in a preseason game with nothing but a cap and sweats on. You haven't earned the right to do that.
Yeah.
You haven't earned the right to do that.
That was a travesty.
But these coaches allow these players to do it, and they create a soft environment, an empowering environment, because the player knows what? All I got to do is get to, week one. If I'm a veteran, once I get to week one, my salary is guaranteed. So you see them playing these games, where they'll cut a veteran and then bring him back after week one so they don't have to guarantee a salary for the year. I mean, it's so much nonsense that goes on. It's ridiculous, But again, it's all about overcorrections, Yeah. Listen, what they're doing with concussions is a good thing. Because I can remember, hey, I rung my bell. How many fingers you got up? Oh, 1, 2, 3. Oh, he's good to go. If you said 2 or 4, they sit you over there for a little while, maybe a quarter, and then send you back in. It's a good thing what they're doing now, but it's an overcorrection because every guy that gets dinged on the head isn't necessarily concussed. Do you err on the side of caution? Absolutely. But all the other ramifications that come along with it have gone too far, and it's damaged the game. Just like not getting enough work has damaged the game. It's damaged the quality of the game. I'm looking at linebackers and defensive backs that can't tackle. They think that if I run up and throw my body into a guy, he's just going to lay down because I want him to lay down. Nonsensical. If you don't put him down, an old coach once told me that guy's not going down because you want him down. He's got a will to stay up. You got to put him down because you want him down more than his will is greater to stay up. Plain and simple.
Yeah. It's amazing. When you're talking about the work that you put in the off season, we're talking about the lack of off season availability for the players because they've, adjudicated that, they're only allowed to be in a certain amount of days. Think of all the days, Seth, that you did more than just the workout that was like laid out for you by the strength and conditioning coaches. I can think of days during the summer where everyone was in town, around OTAs and that sort of thing. And I would be in the facility talking to a coach and he'd say, hey, let's get you out there on the lollipop. Let's get you out there on the one-man sled. We're going to work on your footwork for a kick-out block, just all those little things. We have a coach now who is trying to preach technique and trying to preach all the mechanics of how to be better, but he doesn't have the availability of the players who they're not there to do the work. So he's trying to coach it right, but he's got the rules that are in place from the union. He's got the rules that are in place from the front office, trying to protect these guys, not letting him just get the minutes. These players aren't even allowed to be out there with the coach on the field during the summer. unless
even if they wanted,
mandated.
even if they wanted to work.
Right. Even if they wanted to, they're not allowed. And it is an extreme overcorrection. It is. I love the way Nick Siriani talks about coaching these guys up the right way, but he's not allowed to do it. He wants to, he will try to, but it's impossible for him to get them coached up properly.
Come on, Joe.
Well, I agree. No, listen, guys, I'm with both of you. I mean,
No, I want to answer your question because you said it was on the players. Everyone kind of shares in this to a certain extent. If the players ask, it's like Joe. It's like having a kid. Okay, kids will get away with as much as you allow them to get away with.
Yeah.
But if they know where the line is, they'll never cross the line. The players have been pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing the line for the last 2 or 3 CBAs. And they finally got it to a place where they don't have to be accountable in the offseason other than 3 or 4 days here or there for the 2 or 3 OTAs that they had. And that's not good enough. It really hurts the young players.
Well, listen, Seth, I agree with you 100%. I mean, it was a great history lesson. It's fascinating. I do remember the idea of some players not being thrilled with, how the Eagles, Buddy, would push it with, hey, if you're not here, I'm going to think a lot less of you. I mean, I remember those days. I was young, but I remember that concept. And I was in no way saying it's only on the players. I was just saying, let's not forget the players' role in this. But clearly it's from an ownership standpoint, to a general manager standpoint, to a head coach standpoint, to a player standpoint, to use an Andy Reid expression, they all got a piece of the pie. How you slice up that pie in percentages, I don't know. But they all have, I think, a heavy hand in it. And I think it has I think it's hurt the NFL products. Simple as that. Now, the key, listen, if the rules don't change, and they're going to change at some point, it's probably going to become even easier on the players. But to me, the key for an organization, while the rules are what they are, I think is primarily, I'll go back to something Joe Douglas talked about when he was Howie Roseman's assistant in 2016 or 2017. He was in studio with Angelo one day, and John and I were both struck by the fact that Joe Douglas was talking a lot and passionately about his desire to find college kids who love football. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just someone who's skilled, but someone who loves football. So to me, the competitive advantage an organization can find, given the rules, is to identify the players on a yearly basis that you can bring in that essentially on their own will choose to do the work. It might not be quite as efficient and effective as what you guys experience hands-on with coaches, but to try to check as many boxes on his own that he can in the off season. I think that's the primary thing an organization can do with the trying to get players. And then certainly while you do have the players in and have certain rules that you certain things you can do, play them more. I mean, I am fundamentally in agreement with both of you that what the Eagles did this preseason was a total joke with a lack of playing time for the starters.
Joe, let me say this. I think that the point that you made is a good one. Joe Douglas talking about what he's talking about. What he's trying to say is that the football goes way beyond what you do in the building. When I was playing, I would get in the building at 7:30 at night. Practice was over. You'd be done with team film work by maybe 4 o'clock. I didn't get home till 7:30, 8 o'clock at night because I didn't like watching film as a group, as a defense, or with the linebackers, because guys weren't watching film to decipher information. They're watching film like they're watching a football game. Yeah. So I'd get me a stack of tapes and I go in one of the meeting rooms in the back, and I watch 2.5, sometimes 3 hours worth of film and take notes to prepare myself for what was coming on Sunday. Yeah. Okay. These players, I'm not so sure that they love the game the way, and it's hard to decipher that for the same way that you can't decipher which guys are home runs and which guys are busts, because these players have learned how to game the system. Yeah, okay? They know that if they can run a fast 40, they realize that if they can get a 40-inch vertical, and if their 3-cone drill is off the charts, that they've just moved up in the draft and they've improved their position from a money standpoint. So, you can ask a player, how much he loves the game.
But he's been coached up. He's been coached up on that answer by his agent and whoever the agent paid to teach him the answer.
Okay.
Yeah, when we actually talked to Alex Singleton on our show today. Alex Singleton, who, it's Tuesday and it's their day off. He was calling us from the facility where he was getting some extra treatment, and he was watching tape of Titans football to get ready for, the schemes that he'll be facing this week against Atlanta. You need the whole team of those guys. And it is becoming increasingly difficult to identify those guys that care about just living and breathing and immersing themselves in the game, because that's what it requires at this level to truly be great.
No, I agree with you 100%. The problem is you have to have football people that understand how to decipher that information. For me, so if I was a GM, okay, and I wanted to figure out what a player, how much a player really loved the game. It's one thing for Howie Roseman to fly down to Alabama and sit down and talk with Nick Saban. Nick Saban's going to give him the real. Then he's going to go over, he's going to talk to his strength and conditioning. Then he's going to get the wide receiver coach. Okay, there's some information you can get there, okay? But the greatest way for me to evaluate what a player is like, I want to see him training, working, studying when he doesn't think anybody's watching him, okay? That tells me a lot. See, nobody had to tell me, oh, go get all the formational runs on Wednesday and all the formational passes on Thursday. Nobody had to tell me to do that, because I loved the game so much and I wanted to be good so bad that I was willing to sacrifice whatever was necessary. Family, friends, relationships, whatever it was, it all became secondary, and they knew, don't mess with him come football season, okay? This is my time to live my dream, and I only got one time to do it, and the crazy thing is I don't know how long it's going to last, okay? So I might as well pour everything that I have into it. But if you watch a guy in the locker room, and he's supposed, in the weight room, for instance, and he's supposed to do 10 reps, and he gets to 8, and he says racket, and he got a spotter, I don't want that guy on my football team, because that son of a bitch will quit in the fourth quarter when I need him the most. I want that guy to look at, don't you dare spot, don't you dare racket, help me through the last 2, because you know what? He's going to dig a little deeper when it really matters, okay? You got football people that think they're football people, that think and believe that they know football, okay? And all they got is the data analytics, okay? And the chatter that they hear from the draft gurus, and they go on that, okay? Yeah. But if I'm evaluating a player, I want to know, I don't just want to know what kind of kid he was in high school and what kind of kid he was when he was a freshman all the way up to senior. I want to see him in his natural environment trying to improve himself when nobody's watching him, because that will tell me all I need to know. Will he do the extra work? Will he do the extra rep? Will he sacrifice when everybody else is out partying and having a good time? Will he sacrifice and do what's necessary to make himself better? Okay. I don't, listen, there's no metric for what's in here, and there's no metric for what's up here. So you'll always have a large failure rate as far as first round draft picks are concerned, because these kids have learned how to game the system, and you can't measure heart and you can't measure intellect. And people say, oh, but they got the Wonderlic test. I know plenty of guys who failed the Wonderlic test, but were football savants. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So that test doesn't really tell you a whole lot. There's some you can get from it, but it doesn't tell you everything that you need to know. Yeah. And you don't know what kids' motivations are.
Well, Seth,
the motivation. That's a huge concept. Guys who stay motivated. In today's world, in today's NFL, guys get validated really early on. When rookies get paid the way they get paid, do those guys automatically assume they've arrived and their work is complete? Because I feel like, we've seen that. Those are the guys who don't make it in the league too long. You almost have to be paranoid to a certain degree that you can't help. You must continue to get better in small ways every day, and it drives you insane and to where you work at an insane level to constantly be upgrading yourself to improve. I don't think it happens the way it should because of the structure, once again, where guys are immediately rewarded just for being there.
Try being a try. Hold on one second, Joy. I'm just going to say this to John, and then you could take it. Try being an 8th round draft pick. They got released the first 2 games of your rookie year. You want to talk about paranoia?
Yeah, I'll bet.
Well, Seth, I'll sum a lot up here, and I think you guys will agree with me on this. That kind of ties in almost everything we've talked about the last 20 minutes. 2 words: Mamba mentality. I mean, Kobe was Kobe because he had the Mamba mentality. He could have been a very good player based on natural athletic ability, but he had a burning desire to get as close to Michael Jordan or try to surpass him as he could. He pushed himself every single day. I mean, this was a guy that was a 3-time champion, and when Shaq got ring number 4, Kobe went back in the shop and became even better to try to get ring, and ultimately got ring 4 and 5. Then after he had ring 5, he ruptures his Achilles. He can barely stand. He's obviously going to be out for the year, but he goes to that freaking free throw line and makes 2 free throws with a ruptured Achilles because he did not want to leave that court until he made those 2 free throws. That is the kind of killer instinct, mentality, whatever you want to call it, Mamba mentality, that every organization in pro football should seek out from every player they get. And obviously you're not going to get a Kobe-like figure all that often, but that's what Howie Roseman should seek out with who he tries to get on his football team, because winning happens with that kind of mentality.
It's hard to decipher. It's really hard to decipher and find those guys because, I've always said there's three different types of football players, in my opinion. You got one guy who's playing for the notoriety. He likes to roll up at the clubs and at the restaurants and, front for the girls. Hey, I play for, so and so and so. Then you got the guy that plays strictly for the money, okay? Especially in today's world, I'm going to play 5 years. I'm a bank 30, 40 million bucks, and I'm cashing out. I'm done. I'm not walking away with my head messed up and, limbs messed up. I'm out, okay? Those 2 guys don't love the game. And then you've got that third player. He plays the game because he wants to be great and he wants to be a champion. The hard part is, how do you get as many of those types of players on your roster? Because it's inevitable with a 53-man roster and 16 guys on the practice squad now, it's inevitable that you get some of those guys in those other 2 categories. So how do you make your roster work, with those guys who don't love the game, as much as the guys, who want to be great and want to be champions and willing to do whatever's necessary, to do that. It's hard to do.
Seth, I saw something in the preseason this year. It's hard to believe I saw anything in the preseason, given how freaking boring it was. But I saw something that I absolutely loved, and it wasn't from the Eagles. I don't know if you guys caught this. In one of the preseason games that Tampa Bay played, I don't know if it was game 1, 2, or 3. In the 4th quarter of the game, Tom Brady was long out of the game. Tom Brady was on the sideline in the 4th quarter of a preseason game, practicing the exchange, center to quarterback exchange, with the 3rd string center. Tom Brady might not ever have a snap ever in pro football with the 3rd string center, but he's doing 2 things right there. One, he's making sure that if that center gets on that field with him, that center's damn well going to know how to do exactly what Tom Brady wants. And 2, and this might have been the more important point Brady was probably conveying to the other 88 players standing on that sideline, we are going to be attention to detail oriented. There's one way to do it, and it's the right way, and you're going to follow me, or I'm going to make sure that I don't want you on my football team. Talk about setting a tone for an organization. He's working with the 3rd string center in the 4th quarter of a preseason game.
Yeah.
Awesome. It's awesome.
It is awesome. And, I think Jalen Hurts has those tendencies. Like, he wants to do those things. He's the son of a coach, and his brother played, and he, he loves football. I do believe that. I just hope that front office allows him to exhibit that. Just like I think we all believe they held him out of that preseason game. I don't think that was his tendency. Like, I think if you let Jalen be Jalen, he plays. But I think that was a directive from somewhere else that is hindering his ability to truly lead this team and make them as adherent as they could be, which is a major problem.
All right, so let's shift for the last 2 minutes. I know people wanted us to kind of break down what's going to happen on, but we had to talk about this to kind of set you up potentially for what Sunday may look like. Series of questions. What are you most excited about for the 2021 Eagles?
No, I'll give you 5. Let me give you. Go ahead, John. John, go ahead.
I want to run the ball. I do believe we have a coach who will call some runs. I think a lot of this is going to be based off that RPO stuff, though, and defenses can dictate what you do, which could work against us and put the ball in Jalen's arm to, pick his way down the field slowly, take the run out of the equation a little bit. But I am excited to see them mash people up front and establish an identity as a rough and tumble offense. I think we can get there. I hope we can if we're allowed.
Hold on, Joe. I can't go past this without asking this question. So they ran the ball 15 times per game in 3 preseason games. That equates to 2.5 carries per quarter. Okay, so now you want this team to run the football.
It was the least in the NFL, I think, wasn't it?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. And Nick Siriani has said, hey, you know what? The running game is going to be a factor in what we do. And we haven't, the only guy that we've seen that got any kind of extensive running was Kenneth Gainwell, the only guy that looked good. So
I think look good in the regular season too. I think he's going to win that starting spot by the end of the year.
Ooh, okay. All right. Note to self. But isn't it a combination of what you do with your offensive line, your tight ends blocking, your young wide receivers understanding, where they fit in the running game and their willingness to block? How do you completely leave that out of preseason and then think you're going to be efficient in it, when the regular season starts?
They seem to think they can just flip a switch. Hey, we're gonna keep everything close to the vest in the preseason. We're not going to show anything, and then we're going to come roaring out the gates in September. Yeah, September is not going to be great. I am positive it will be bumpy, but by the end of the year, when teams have to run it, and we are finally in football shape, and we're finally locked into what our bread and butter plays can be. Hopefully that's, off the RPO stuff. I think we can. This offensive line is good. We have a lot of backs, and I do like Kenneth Gainwell a lot, as mentioned. I believe they can do some damage. I'm hoping and praying that there is not a directive from upstairs saying the owner's unhappy because we are not throwing it enough.
You got the floor, Joe.
Seth, the number one thing I'm intrigued about, clearly, is Jalen Hurts. What has he got? I mean, all this speculation is pretty much going to be out the window. Not entirely in 5 days.
Hold on a second. This is like when I listen to you guys' show. You have a question that comes up. John answers the question. You go off on a tangent, and then John's got to pull you back. But the question was, what are you most excited about? Not intrigued. What are you most excited about?
I'm setting up. I mean, if I wasn't interrupted here, I had the whole setup. The setup was simple. The thing I'm most intrigued about is Jalen Hurts for the obvious reasons. We're going to find out what he's got. But Seth, the thing that I am the most excited about by a pretty good margin, actually, is Devante Smith. I think Devante Smith in 2 to 3 or 4 years is going to be the best player on the team. And I think he's going to be a phenomenal pro football player. So I'm really excited to see the infusion of that level of talent It's pretty rare. As an organization, the Eagles, I mean, you go in the Wayback Machine, they had some great receivers, Tommy McDonald and all that. Certainly. And they've been fortunate. They've had a couple of Hall of Famers. But, obviously in the 70s, Harold, in the 80s, you had Mike, who I do believe would have been a Hall of Famer had he not gotten injured. I thought Mike Quick was just unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And then to me, the only other truly great one since then is Terrell Owens, which was only a year and a half. Fred Barnett was definitely pretty good. Irving Fryer was really good, but it was only for 2 really great seasons. He was near the end, but he was phenomenal for 2 years. I think Devante Smith, Seth, has a chance to be a top 5 player in Philadelphia sports for a decade if he can stay healthy and if they can keep him under contract. So I'm really excited to see. I mean, think about it this way. Other than that one Zach Ertz year, Seth, where Ertz had 118 catches or whatever he had in like 2018, Eagles wide receivers, you look at other teams, you play fantasy football, you look at stats, wide receivers, I mean, they get 100 catches like it's nothing these days. Some guys get 120. Guys will get 125 catches, they'll have 1,600 yards, they'll have 14 touchdowns. I mean, no Eagles wide receiver sniffs that. I'm really excited, Seth, to see Devante Smith, who absolutely destroyed the SEC in college football last year, to see what he's got. And whether ultimately he's paired with Jalen Hurts for the next 5 to 10 years, probably unlikely, but he's going to help Hurts this year, and he's going to help the organization if he stays healthy for a long time.
I will say this, the Eagles have drafted 12 wide receivers in the last 11 drafts, okay? Some of them shouldn't have been drafted, but I will tell you this. A lot of them, their development was stunted based upon the coaching that they had, okay? I think that Devante Smith and Quez Watkins, I'm still kind of iffy on Jalen Reagor. I think those 2 guys, more than anything, have the potential to be stars. And I think that they're going to get there just because of the type of coaching that they're getting. For the first time in a long time, I see wide receivers being coached, on how to run routes. I mean, I'm watching Devante Smith. I'm watching him stem his route at the top, selling the DB to the outside and cutting out. That's the separation that we've been crying about for the last, I don't know how many years. Instead of just having guys run a route off the route, off the line of scrimmage, you set the guy up for what you want by going the opposite way. The defender's always going to bite on the first fake. So if you stem him at the top and you stab with that inside foot, he's going to react to that. That means that now you can break out and you got the separation that you want. But we haven't seen that being coached in the good receivers, nor the receivers, that should have been drafted where they've been drafted. And I'm not even going to say any names. One of them who's still on the roster, and I'm still perplexed that he's on the roster. Okay. Next question. John, what are you most concerned about for the 2021 Philadelphia Eagles?
Wow. Well, I do have numerous concerns about this team. Most concerned, I have no idea. Jeez, I don't know. I am concerned about I do think our offensive line getting Landon Dickerson back and playing. I think he will work his way into a starting role. I do like the other backup offensive linemen. Initially, I would have said depth in the trenches, but I'm not as worried about the depth on the offensive line because those young guys played last year, and they look like they're pretty well set and secure there. But on the defensive side of things, that front, I hear a lot of people say one of the top fronts in the NFL, 3rd in the league in sacks last season. And they got better because Javon Hargrave is now healthy and he's back. I don't know how this is going to look from a getting to the quarterback perspective with that D line. I'm not sold on Derek Barnett. Brandon Graham last year with his Pro Bowl, headed to the Pro Bowl, but he only had 8 sacks. I need production, and that's from guys like Josh Sweat. That's from guys like Derek Barnett. That's from a guy in Ryan Kerrigan who hasn't played at all in Philadelphia because as soon as he got here, he got the injury right at the beginning of camp. I am worried that we won't get adequate pressure up front because our front isn't as good as they need to be from a depth perspective, and they're just getting old.
All right, so I'm insulted, Seth, that John did not get a scolding for his meandering answer right there, because I believe the question was most concerned, and it turned into a 3-minute dissertation.
I just wanted to give you an opportunity to turn the tables for once on him.
All right, here's the simple answer for most concerned. I mean, other than the catch-all injuries could always think.
I really didn't know the answer. I think that's the problem, Joe. I don't know.
No, I do know the answer. There is a clear number one, Seth, for most concerned, and it's Jalen Hurts. If Jalen Hurts cannot be effective passing the football, then it could sink the season. And that, to me, that's far and away the greatest concern. I mean, we know he can run. We know he's physically tough. But, I'm talking about accuracy. I'm talking about pocket presence, which I thought was not great last year, particularly as he kind of played more games. Reading defenses, I'm not really sure yet. I just don't know where he's at on that. But listen, this is a passing league. I mean, the rules are geared to passing the ball. So all that run stuff, I'm with both of you guys. I hope they run it more. But, you got to be able to pass the ball a lot and pass it effectively. And if he can't do that effectively, then that could sink the season.
I think Jalen Hurts, it will be better than I thought. I think there were, I have been somewhat of a naysayer on this team. I think Jalen Hurts, and this is just based on reports because we all know we didn't see him play. He played 10 snaps. The fact that they were comfortable enough sitting him for the tummy ache, the fact that they didn't play him in the third preseason game, all based on reports that he looked like he's progressing, like he's taking the coaching and running with it. I love his attitude. I love how he's a football head. I think that Jalen Hurts is going to win some games for us. And I am not as worried as I was at the beginning of the summer about Jalen Hurts. And that's crazy because, again, I didn't see anywhere close to enough of him.
I agree. I think that the kid is built for Philadelphia. He's built all the things that he's been through has set him up to deal with this situation. And I don't think he'll fade from it. Joe, it is a passing league, but unless you got Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, who are some of the other top flight quarterbacks?
Russell Wilson, Tom Brady.
Russell Wilson, Tom Brady. Unless you got one of those guys on your team, the run is what sets up the pass. So you can come out throwing it 30, 40, 50 times if you want to. If you're not fooling the defense, if you're not making the defense be honest, especially with a young quarterback, you're asking for trouble. You're asking for trouble. And then we're going to be sitting here talking about, oh, Jalen Hurts can't do this. He can't do that. Listen, when every game over the last 2 years, when Carson Wentz threw the ball over 40 times, the Eagles had problems. Yeah. They had problems. Okay? It wasn't the fact that Carson couldn't throw the ball, that he couldn't be what he was in 2017. It was the fact that Doug Peterson, whether he made the decision or the decision was coming from elsewhere, decided to throw the ball too much. And you sent the message to defenses that, you know what, hey, because I used to tell my D-line, I'm like, dude, they're not running the ball. Go get the quarterback. If they run it on a delayed draw or something, don't worry about it. I got it. You guys go get the quarterback because they can't run it, and we know they can't run it, and they know they can't run it, okay? So as far as Jalen is concerned, a lot will depend on how he's handled and what they decide to do and what they ask of him. You can either set him up to succeed because you're going to have good offensive line play. I always say this, a running back's best friend is either a good running game or a great offensive line. They got the offensive line if they can stay healthy, okay? Now add to that by adding a halfway decent running game where you keep defenses off balance. So all of those RPOs and those bootlegs and those sprint outs, and all those misdirection plays that you want to run, you can get it because the linebackers have to freeze, the safeties have to play honest, and that puts the defense a tick behind. But if you come out and you're going to throw it every down, good coordinators are going to figure out a way to break down your protection and get to your quarterback. And then we're going to sit here talking about how bad Jalen Hurts is. I don't believe it's going to fall on him. I believe it's going to fall on Steichen, Siriani, to do the right thing to help this guy win. Last question, okay? Breakout player of the year on defense and offense.
Kenny Gainwell, offense. He's gonna be good. And I don't think Miles Sanders is as good. Miles Sanders has been so ballyhooed since he arrived here, and it was sort of a false sense of security. And I think Kenneth Gainwell is a better back than he is, and it'll work out that way by the end of the season. Joe, offense for you?
Breakout player on offense, I'm going to go with Landon Dickerson. Seth,
I love him.
I considered Gainwell. I considered Quez, but Dickerson's a guy that's not even designed to start right now, who I think could be a star in Philadelphia and presumably a guard this year. I think he's going to have.
He'll beat out Sayamalo.
Yeah, I mean,
he's nasty.
People aren't talking about him. I think that guy's going to be phenomenal. So we'll see if he can get there.
Hopefully they let him play with the injury concerns and that sort of thing, the rehab. Defense, it's got to be Josh Sweat. So much. I mean, if we could somehow get that guy, and finally we've got a defensive end, a 4-3 defensive end that looks like a 4-3 defensive end, a guy who's long and he's got those arms and he can keep people out of away from his body, and he can. I like Josh Sweat a lot, and we've been hearing great things about him. I have seen nothing that would support this, but I think he's taken a step in the right direction, and he can tee off this year, hopefully, and give us that defender that offenses have to try to scheme for. And if that happens, then that opens things up inside for Fletcher and Javon Hargrave. I'm praying that occurs.
Listen, before you go, Joe, on Josh Sweat, I believe that he's already beat out Derek Barnett to be the starter on the right side. That's just based upon what I've seen, what I've heard. This guy's been dominating all preseason and all training camp. My number one concern with Josh Sweat has always been that knee, because he hasn't been a guy that you could put out there to be a consistent player. He's always been a role player, because every time you see him, he's dragging that knee. It looks like it's healthy. And if it's healthy, look out, because this guy's got things that the other defensive ends don't. Derek Barnett and Brandon Graham, they're going to speed rush you. And then once they get the tackles to turn their shoulders, they're going to convert from speed to power. That's all they got. That's why you only see Derek Barnett flash once in a while in a game, against the best defensive lineman, the best offensive lineman on everybody's team. I thought that was a mismatch when they decided to play him there, okay? But now you got a guy like Josh Sweat, to your point, John, who is a true bona fide 4-3 defensive end that can handle those big guys, that has multiple moves, hand moves. I mean, his hand move game has just went off the charts, and he got inside moves, outside moves. And I'm not talking about ET and TE stunts. He's got moves. And if that knee is 100% healthy, he's going to be the starter by week 2.
Seth, my breakout guy on defense, I'm going to go with the D tackle / DN rookie Milton Williams, 3rd round pick. Thought he showed some nice stuff in the preseason. I considered Zach McPherson here with this answer because I thought he was up and down in the preseason games, but people say he played very well in camp. But I think Milton Williams looks like a player. And Howie took some heat for drafting him, because if you remember, that was at a point when they hadn't signed Steve Nelson. They hadn't drafted Zach McPherson until, the next day in the 4th round. And people are like, why aren't you taking a cornerback here in the 3rd round? You desperately need a corner. But Howie went with who he thought he wanted to go with. and I think the guy looks pretty good. So he's my answer. But I will say dark horse candidate, breakout guy on defense is the defensive coordinator, Jonathan Gannon. How good he schemes, we'll see. But I will tell you, I've talked to people that say he's very, very impressive on a personal level. And I know some people that tell me he's got the makings of a head coach someday. Now, no NFL owner believes in hiring a defensive person anymore to be a head coach of pro football. But people say this Gannon guy's pretty legit. So I look forward to seeing what he's got.
Interesting. Well, my breakout guys are Gainwell. I agree with John. I just think that this kid, what's going to wind up happening is they're going to play him in so many different areas that they're going to create so many problems for defenses. He's the kind of player that, you leave him in, or you create a 21 personnel scenario where him and Miles Sanders is in the game. Yeah. What does that do? That makes teams either play regular personnel, or it makes them play base, or it makes them play big nickel. Okay. Then you take Kenneth Gainwell and you motion him out of the backfield.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you're creating stress that they couldn't even have, dreamed of. Okay.
Yeah, and he can beat cornerbacks. Well, he beat college cornerbacks. We'll see if he can do that.
He doesn't have to beat pro cornerbacks, because you're not going to motion him all the way out where he's on the number one cornerback. If he's in man coverage, the number one is going to stay on the number two, a number one wide receiver anyway. So he's either going to draw a safety, or he's going to draw the number three cornerback. That's a matchup that even at this level and at this time, I believe he wins. Okay. Yeah. But then what is the other option that it gives you? It also gives you the option of pulling a guy out of the box, getting 6-on-6 blocking, and you turn around handing the ball to Miles Sanders with man blocking. Okay. Yeah. So Kenneth Gainwell is going to be a major key to this offense, in my opinion. I love Josh Sweat, but I think the world of Alex Singleton, man. I think this guy is primed and ready to step up. I think he's the best linebacker that they got. I think that, what I feel about him and what I think about it goes right along with the fact that, this guy's been on this roster for 3 years and he's named a captain, a defensive captain. Okay. I think he's the only guy in the linebacker core that when they line up and he's reading the play, that knows what the hell he's doing. The rest of the guys, they're looking in the backfield trying to figure it out while they're getting hit up under the chin by an offensive lineman. So I know that, my listeners want to hear more football talk, but the fact of the matter is, guys, we don't know who the Eagles are going to be, because they've hidden what they are on the defensive side of the ball, and who and what they're going to be on the offensive side of the ball, even special teams wise. So that precipitated us to have the conversation that we had. So I'm going to end the show and I'm going to wrap it right there. And listen, I appreciate having you guys on. This has been absolutely awesome. I tell my guests each and every week, our most valuable commodity is our time. You guys gave me an hour and 12 minutes. I very rarely go over an hour and 5, but the content and the conversation was just that good. I humbly thank you guys. I appreciate you, man.
Thanks, Seth.
Seth, always great being on your show, man. Always my pleasure.
You got it, man. Anytime. Well, guys, that's the show for today. As always, like I say, take care of each other and love each other, but most importantly, take care of each other and be kind to each other. But most importantly, make sure you love each other. I'll see you guys next week. We'll be talking Eagles, win, lose, or draw. Peace.